Right now, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome my good friend and co-host, Jeff Small, president of Arbor Financial Services, a retirement income store in Melbourne, Florida. He's also author of the Amazon best-selling book, Turning Financial Planning Right Side Up. Jeff, great to have you back, and it was great to see that last weekend. You got to spend some time in your cabin in North Carolina, and the girls got to experience some snow, something they don't get in Florida, right?
They did. They got to snowboard for the first time, Dave, and they were like champs. After an hour lesson, they were running down the mountain at 30 miles an hour.
I love it. I love it. And we also want to take this opportunity to bring in a good friend of mine and Jeff's, and a new friend of the income generation who doesn't get to experience any snow, and that's Joann Regan, president of Financial Security Group, a retirement income store located in Glendale, Arizona. And Joann's been in business for over 20 years. She's the president of FSG Tax Advisors and FSG of Nevada. Joann, thanks so much for being here with us to answer some of our tax questions on the income generation.
Well, thank you for having me, Dave. And hi, Jeff. How are you as well? I'm glad to be here and glad to be able to assist in any way that I can.
Joann, give us your biggest, what are your biggest concerns tax-wise? Just give us one, your biggest concern about taxes in a Biden administration.
I would have to say that my biggest concern that I'm looking at with my tax clients and with people in general is his plan to raise taxes at the top on the people who do make a little bit more than the average person, and also his plans to raise the corporate tax rates, because I do feel like that is going to have some sort of a trickle-down effect.
Yeah, corporate rates are, going to be an outlier here in terms of how it affects stock prices, how it affects the core viewership of the income generation. So, should folks be looking at locking in capital gains in 2021 versus 2022 because the threat of capital gains could increase next year? Joann?
Yes, they are definitely looking at increasing them. And I definitely think that, if you have some capital gains that you want to pay at the lower rate right now, that this would probably be a good time to do that. It is going to be an issue. There's some other things that are going to be coming down the pike, it looks like, that will affect capital gains with regard to estate planning as well, which we'll get into later. But all of that is definitely something that the average taxpayer should be looking at for sure.
Do you think he's going to stick to his promise to protect the middle class, or do you think likely taxes are going up a little bit for everyone?
Well, in reviewing all of his proposals, I'm seeing that most of the tax raising is directed to higher income folks, people that make over 400. And while that is a smaller segment of our population, those are people that own businesses or, are highly skilled. And so when you raise the taxes on those individuals, they're not going to be able to absorb all of that. Those large corporations are not going to be able to absorb it. And what is the result going to be? Probably lower dividends, probably going to pass on higher pricing. All of that stuff is going to trickle down to the middle class and to the lower income classes as well, no matter how we look at it.
It always does seem to trickle down, doesn't it, Jeff?
It does. And Joann, what's going to happen is when we incentivize companies to pay lower tax offshore as opposed to at home domestically, meaning rates are cheaper offshore than they are here tax-wise for big corporations, what happens? What do you think is going to happen when that occurs again?
Well, obviously, again, we're going to see lower employment, because if they're, going offshore to do things or trying to bring it back, no matter which direction they go, there's going to be ramifications of that, no matter how you do it. But with the proposals to try to raise, a lot of the different things like capital gains and all of that, these companies are going to have to try to figure out a way to stay in business. They're already being affected by the pandemic, and there's always a lot of ramifications to what's going on. How are they going to be able to do this? Is it going to be because they're taking away benefits? Are they going to, try to do away with some of their employees? Are they going to try to offshore things? What's going to happen? There has to be a way to make this work, and they're going to figure it out. They always learn how to circumvent it no matter what. It doesn't work to target one group to serve another group. It never works.
Yeah, it's got to be fair. So Joann, in 30 seconds we have left in this segment, being one of the few advisors that's a holistic advisor, really and truly, taxes, estate planning, investments, how important it is with these changes in 2021 for people to review their financial plan, especially if they're part of the income generation.
I feel like people are going to have to look at what they have from the standpoint of taxation in the future. If they are heavy holdings in a lot of different investments that have a lot of capital gains, I think we're going to have to look at that and see how are we going to be able to assist them so that they don't end up losing much more in the future. And I do think that everybody's going to have to look at their entire financial plan to figure out what is it that they're trying to achieve in order to be able to maximize their earnings with and minimize their taxation.
Right. All right. Some great words of wisdom, Joann. I really appreciate your expertise as usual, especially in the tax realm. If you're willing, I'd like to have you back in a couple weeks to talk about estate planning also and some of the changes there, if that works for you.
It does, because there are some
Great.
taxation issues that are going to affect estate planning, and I would love to discuss that with you.
Let's do that. Let's have you back, Joann. And when we come back, I'll share a few thoughts on how you can help prepare yourself for changes that are actually coming to the retirement planning landscape. Plus, Jeff and I will be talking to our next guest, a perennial friend of the income generation, Iowa-based financial advisor Matthew Johnson, and you're not going to want to miss this interview. We'll be right back.